Hello, I'm Miranda Brawn, and I'm the host and the creator and the co-producer for the D.A.R.E podcast. We're all about successful mindsets. And for those that don't know, D stands for having the determination to dream bigger. A is about the action. R's the resilience, reinvention, and the E is all about the energy and the enthusiasm. I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest today, and I'm going to call her Eleonora, and I'm going to let Eleonora introduce herself. So Eleonora, over to you, and thank you so much for joining us and supporting the D.A.R.E podcast.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Eleonora Srugo. Most people know me from Selling the City on Netflix, and I'm so happy to be on the D.A.R.E podcast with Miranda. Thank you. I've also been in real estate in New York City for 16 years. And that is primarily, I would say, number one job source of income. I'm a native New Yorker, very proud of it, and try to be as community-minded as possible. And that's it.
That's an amazing introduction. And I've also noticed you've got a YouTube channel about fitness, and I can't wait to get into that.
Actually, I have a YouTube. I just did a YouTube channel, and I maybe have some old fitness videos on it, but no, there is actually someone else who has dedicated a YouTube channel to my weight loss and fitness for some reason. They're actually pretty accurate, which is interesting because they piecemealed it together. But yeah, you know, it's cool, I guess. I definitely don't consider myself an expert in the field of fitness or anything like that, but I'm certainly blessed in that I live in a city where the best of the best work and own gyms, and so I have access to it.
That's amazing. So let's start there with regards to the whole weight loss, because you've been on this weight loss journey. You really take care of yourself. How did that start? When did that start? And what steps did you take to actually lose the weight and decide to be really healthy?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually was thinking about this a lot last night because I happened to scroll on a Instagram video of a girl who said, "Oh, I lost 175 pounds," and I never realized like how many compliments you get when you're thin. And I was like, "Wow, I agree." Mm-hmm. I actually, it's funny. Like when I was like thin at work, so many of my managers, superiors, other women were like, "Oh my God, you look great," which I had never received before. I wouldn't say that I was on this journey for weight loss. I just, generally speaking, was like a thick girl. You know, my mom was a thick girl. I had an ass growing up. I didn't like it at first. When J-Lo got really famous, I did like it. So it worked for me in high school. You know, and I just like, I was a normal girl who actually struggled with like, I could look a little bloated. If you had your period, you feel fat, like nights where you don't want to go out. But, you know, it sort of manifests in very different ways. When I was growing up, it was before the world of social media. So I was comparing my physical appearance to either what I saw in celebrity or what I saw in my world. Mm. I grew up in downtown Manhattan. You know, we were a bunch of immigrant kids, artist children, very diverse group of children. So there was never a feeling that somehow like my body type or my perception of beauty didn't fit in. The first time that it really became, a little bit aware to me that like maybe the rest of the world sort of has skinniness as a commodity was sort of when we interacted with the Upper East Side kids, or like what you sort of saw in Gossip Girl, the kids that went to private schools on the Upper East Side. Those girls were really skinny. And then when I went to college, again, you sort of expand. Now I like met girls from the South who all had hair extensions, and LA girls who were, had the perfectly plucked eyebrows and lip blushing. We're talking about 2005, laser hair removal, doing all the things that I never did in New York. Like I was barely waxing, let alone laser hair removal when I got to college. But then suddenly you're sort of exposed. And then I met the Long Island girl who was a skinny mini who never, had dressing with a salad ever, or I ate a French fry. And of course, now we live in a world where we have access to social media. And so our bubble is massive. And now we're looking at Korean beauty treatments and BBLs out of Brazil and so many different perceptions of what beauty means. So that's a long-winded way of saying I was the thicker girl, and in many ways it worked for me. Like at times when I used that weight at the gym, I looked good, I felt good. I certainly got a lot of male attention that way. And then other points when I sort of was slacking or at work a lot, it didn't look as good and it didn't feel as good, and I actually felt trapped in my own body with the weight. So for me, it really was never about specifically weight loss. I idealize body types like J-Lo. So I sort of looked at her weight and height as like a proportion of what I thought I should look like based on my body type. I will say I was lucky that my weight was always in my limbs. It would go to my arms and my legs and not my stomach. So, you know, in a weird way, I always had an hourglass shape, but I never, I don't know, I didn't get the luxury. Like some girls who gain weight in their stomach complain, but I'm like, they can wear like a big dress and like have tiny, scrawny legs. Like I never had that. I never show my legs. Even to this day, I probably would never show my legs. You've never seen me in a mini anything and never will. I don't like them. I don't like how they look. But anyway, the point is, I, at 31, it wasn't a weight loss journey. It was more that like, I became very successful at 26. I had at 23 decided to cut off sort of socializing and going out and just focus on my career. I really like abandoned my friends, abandoned the New York City scene, and threw myself into real estate. By 26, it worked. I was successful. I was making money. But at that point, there was no desire to go back to a world where you're like checking to see if like a guy texted you back or going to the club. I was much happier going home and ordering Nobu and like enjoying it with my mom or my grandma, or after work with my 2 gay coworkers going to get Chinese food. Like I was just living in that world with no sort of outside pressures. But when I turned 30, I really woke up and was like, wow, you know, do you ever want to have a family? Do you ever want to get married? And all of those things led me to going to the gym. I coincidentally had signed up for Tracy Anderson Method, which was a gym that is very expensive. It's about $1,000 a month to join. But Gwyneth Paltrow and J-Lo used to go, sort of the original of the female fitness, whatever, influencers, I guess. And that's it. And so I started there. I probably lost about 20 pounds initially there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just working out. And then one night I had sex. I sort of speak about it on the show. It was like a random night.
Was it an 8-year drought?
It was an 8-year
drought. Yeah.
But not an intentional drought. It was like, I didn't even drink, but not intentional either. I just was like, I didn't even realize.
You were just focused on your career. And it's funny because I can relate to that where, you know, at the age of 23, I also just went into and focused on my career. And then I got to where I wanted to get to by 28, 30 as well. So I think I'm a big fan of, if you're in your 20s, really go for it. Because it's harder. It's not impossible, but it's harder to get there as you get older because the energy levels aren't quite as you get older. The energy levels aren't quite as much as, you know, they were when you're 20.
I'm like, I could have had a little fun. I could have taken care of myself. I could have, done my highlights and worked out. I could have had a little bit of a life, but that was what I chose and that's what I needed. It felt very much like survival to me.
Yeah.
There was no way, I couldn't, there's no backup plan. I otherwise could not pay rent if I didn't make it work. So I had to be all in. There really wasn't an alternative. But yeah, well, I will say this, having sex is a great motivator for weight loss. It just, it happened. And like, no one wants to eat a big meal and then flop around naked. So it definitely like motivated me to not, just actually not even having sex, just the thought that it could happen now that I'd had it was like, kept me kind of on a roll. And actually, luckily, I actually met a guy shortly after on a dating app that actually was in fitness. He was
was this Justin that appears on the show? Or
he does not appear on the show, actually. He did film a scene, but you would have to catch him on background. He owns a gym. He's one of my dear friends to this day. He's actually my trainer, but he really influenced my thinking around health and strength and sort of that like lifting weights gets you bulky. I mean, complete load of crap. Or that like, eating a fruit will get you fat. I mean, it just completely, changed my whole approach to food and working out, and also separating the relationship between the two.
Yeah.
Like not this thing where like, okay, well, if I ate really badly, then like I should punish myself. And now I need to, not eat for a day or not go to the gym. Like one bad meal is not going to ruin my fitness plan, just like one missed workout won't. And just because I had a bad meal at lunch doesn't mean I'm like some criminal that shouldn't like go out and have sex at night now because I was bad earlier. It's this weird crime and punishment thing that should be completely unrelated. Food has its relationship to you, and then strength has its relationship to you. And that's it. And their relationship to each other sort of subsided for me. And that was a really big influence in my life. And he, I think, changed my mindset, but he also changed my body. And with him, and then I sort of was at a certain weight. And then, I really wanted to see what it was like to be the skinny girl and so like lose another 10 pounds. And so then for those last 10 pounds, I got on a GLP-1 and I did it before anyone else did. This was in 2020, but I wasn't gatekeeping. I actually shared the wealth. I told all my friends, including the friends on the show, all about it. I shared the wealth, and it was like a miracle. It's a miracle drug in a way. You sort of like go into a weird coma and wake up really skinny. And then it's kind of cool to see how skinny you can be. And then I also think it's a very good, if anyone has mindset issues with food, it's great because there is a habit that food can be comforting, or that you can go home after a bad day and order a lot of food. And then when you're on a GLP-1 and you order all that food and then it kind of makes you like nauseous, it's actually good psychologically to train your brain to sort of get off of it. So anyway, the biggest thing is that it really changed my relationship with fitness. Fitness is a non-starter for me. It goes in the schedule every Monday, which workouts I want on which days. And I don't bend. If I need to, leave the office, obviously for very important clients, I'll adjust. But generally speaking, those are hard lock times where I won't schedule anything else. I need it. I need it for the only time really where I feel disconnected from the phone. I need it for a sense of community outside of this bubble of finance and wealth and real estate. And that's it. But anyway, so I wouldn't call it a weight loss journey. Now I'm actually even thinner than I want to be, predominantly because I'm now, I guess, an old bitch and I'm having hormonal issues, which sucks. But I guess the good news is that you can like.
Well, you're going to start putting on weight soon, so don't worry about that.
Okay. I guess good. Yeah.
So, and I follow you on Instagram and I see all the workouts, etc. And it is so motivational. But let's go right back to the beginning. What were you like as a child? You've touched upon, growing up in New York. I believe it was Soho where you grew up. And how did you start real estate? Because this podcast show is all about, helping students in the classroom to adults in the boardroom and beyond. So there might be some students that are listening to this and thinking, or some young people, or maybe someone who's looking to start their second career and thinking, I wouldn't mind, selling real estate. How can they get started? But how did you get started? Is this something, as a child, you were like, I want to go out and sell real estate?
Absolutely not. Real estate was like the job you did not want when I was a child. We called it before. I don't even want to say what they were, but the main one was it was for people who failed at other jobs. It's a license that you can get in about a month or two. Now you can even do it online. So there's a very low barrier to entry for the industry. You don't need a college degree, but there's an 87% failure rate. So there's a very high bar for success because you essentially can get a license that gives you a title, but then what do you do with it? Like there's really nowhere to start. As a child, it's funny. I was an immigrant child. So initially I was very shy and antisocial. I sort of dressed differently. I looked different. I kept to myself. I, was made fun of when I spoke. I sort of didn't know these American, pastimes and gym classes. So, it's always like the last one picked, sort of the last one in a race. I just, there were moments where I was completely miserable. So I did keep a lot to myself, but something happened in middle school. I flourished, I guess, in a way that suddenly my look became appealing. And I'm telling you, I walked into school in 8th grade after being like the biggest loser who had like, no one would sit next to me. And suddenly like one of the cool guys at school was like, "Hey, how was your summer?" And I was like, "Is it that easy? I guess it is that easy." And so then I was suddenly cool because I was dating the popular boy. But it was like a 180. But after that, that really gave me like a platform to go and be myself and be the person that I was at home outside. And I had a great childhood. I enjoyed it. But financially, things had changed for my mother. She was a single mother, so she worked multiple jobs. But I could tell that things were getting tough in high school. And so for me, suddenly there became an emphasis on like, how do I actually make money? Because I'm in a great school. I know I'm good at math. I'm a good student, but like getting into college doesn't necessarily mean rich. I don't know. I was actually trying to really understand what that meant beyond college. Whereas I think too often, like people that are in high school look at college or grad school or, and they don't actually come up with a plan because just because you're really smart. And I've been around, I went to a school for excelling students. They're mostly immigrant kids. They sort of live below the poverty line, but they're exceptionally smart. They all go to Ivy Leagues, but they often don't find success. It eludes them because they haven't actually planned financially, something that I didn't really do either. Real estate was not a job that I desired, but in retrospect, it was a job that fit everything I wanted for my lifestyle. So when I fantasized about the woman I wanted to be, I didn't fantasize about myself sitting in some big glass office or, traveling on a plane from city to city. I did actually visualize and see myself getting in and out of SUVs or at the time, probably limos. I saw myself sort of being mobile. I saw myself on the phone. I saw myself meeting up with clients and friends for lunch meetings and, when you sort of daydream and getting
So this was your version of visualization, because successful mindsets, it could be vision boards, but for you were actually visualizing it. You were daydreaming. This is what I want in my future. Would you say that was your main successful mindset tip that helped you achieve what you wanted to achieve?
I was definitely manifesting and visualizing the type of woman I wanted to be, but I didn't know what to call it, right? I didn't know that meant real estate or New York, but I knew that I wanted to do something in New York. I love New York. And so really what happened was I went the traditional route. I went to college. I got myself in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt to go to college. It's okay. It was a, good experience for what it was worth. I had a very nice corporate job right after school, but it was just not sustainable. Entry level salary when you are in debt and, minimum rent in New York is $2,000 and that's not even what you make a month. It just doesn't add up. I was making more money working in a retail store, but where was my future working in retail, right? And I really was. I debated that. I debated, it was a store called Intermix. I debated going back to be a manager at Intermix and after going to college because this corporate job was just not working. And so then I sort of asked around. I finally met a real estate agent who was incredibly successful and was like, "I never hire new agents, but, I have a good feeling about you." And he sort of took a chance on me. And I decided to go all in on it, but it did take like 2 to 3 years to make money. And so like it was 2 to 3 very rough years. But then when it hit, it was exponential. There is a learning curve. You have to sort of look at it as an apprenticeship. You just sort of absorb like a sponge, follow everyone around. And you have to want it like so bad, meaning there would never, right now I have a team of 3 people. None of them are here because I think they knew I was doing this. So, but it's like, they should be, I would have been here, right? I would have at that time in my life at 8 a.m., I was at the office, whether I had something to do or not. I wanted to know who else was around and listen to them and see what they were doing. You have to do everything. And when you think you've done everything, you do more. You have to ask yourself, what else have you not done? Recently I met with a young woman who sells high ticket luxury goods, and she wanted some advice on, sales. And I'm like, you're selling tickets to like concerts and the Super Bowl and this, like, shouldn't you know every single suite at the Super Bowl and who owns it and who bought it and check it off? Or like, why don't you have a chart of every courtside seat in Madison Square Garden and have the name of the owner? Like, that's half the battle, is knowing your inventory, what it is. You want to, be the best. And also, look, there's a lot that, you touched on at the beginning of this about appearance and how that sort of plays into being in sales. I actually think it was a benefit to me to not look the way I do now when I started off. I think that served in sort of helping refocus the attention to what I was saying instead of what I looked like.
And I think that's so important. And there's so many things that you've covered there. But I think the resilience, the R in D.A.R.E stands for the resilience. And I think it's so important that people realize that success doesn't come straight away. It took you 3 years before you actually started to make some serious cash. And I think sometimes people think, oh, this isn't working out after a year or two. Let me give up and try something else. Oh, that's not working out after a few years. Let me try something else. So I think it's really important, that resilience aspect, to keep going. And if you focus and you keep going, then you will achieve success. But
totally.
it's really
eventually
interesting.
It hits,
Yes.
Even
Yes.
if you look at some of the women on the show, one of them is only working in Jersey now, which is fine, but she was about to give up. She had not done a single deal. And now 5 years later, she's got a nice, solid business going for her in New Jersey, which is a far cry from where she started and what her alternative job was. For me too, there were really moments, there were a lot of failures, a lot of rejection from clients, a lot of deals that you work on that fall through. One, which was very heartbreaking, that I thought was done and even went out to celebrate, and then found out that, one of my manager had sort of taken it away from me and done the deal themselves. This happens all the time. It is, I had a girl here having anxiety because, she was going to have to start paying rent next month. Like, don't let the anxiety kick in until you're like 3-4 months behind in rent. Then you'll know what real anxiety is. Like if you're 22 and you're about to pay rent for the first time, like, life is good. But if you're 22 and 200 grand in debt and you haven't paid rent in 3 months, then talk to me. Like, I don't think a lot of people even understand what a real stress looks like. And those are the moments, hopefully, where you break through.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's so much to cover with regards to what you've just said, but let's talk about the fashion aspect, because as a woman, when you are in the workplace, I think now it's different in 2026, but, we're near enough the same sort of age group. And if you wear makeup, if you look after yourself, if you have an interest in fashion, I know from your Netflix show, Selling the City, fashion played a major part in terms of your brand, of all the designer brands and, your hair and your makeup. And I understand that you're saying for the first, 10 years or so of your career, you didn't really focus on that. You were more focused on getting the work done. And it's only more recently that you focused on the external aspect. But what advice would you give to a young woman or woman of any age who is working in a male-dominated environment? She's wanting to succeed and she's struggling to feel included or to feel accepted. What advice would you give to that woman? And if she wants to put some makeup on and, wear something professional that might be a bit trendy, a bit fashionable, what advice would you give to her?
Yeah, it's hard. It's a very interesting balance to find your femininity and sexuality, but also be taken seriously as an intellectual. Sort of like that age-old, can Kylie Jenner be Oprah? I don't know. The answer is I don't think so. I grew up really admiring very strong women who maybe to a fault were disguising their feminine identity, like Hillary Clinton, for example, right? She wore these boring pantsuits all the time. And she, in her book, she says the reason why she wore those same pantsuits was that no one would talk about what she was wearing and they would listen to the words that were coming out of her mouth. And, but then you see someone like, Michelle Obama or Melania, who came into these same roles that Hillary was in, but wore fashion and, showed off their butt, their amazing arms in the case of Michelle, or Melania with her beautiful, Ralph Lauren suits. And we love those conversations, and it sort of gives us a glimpse as to who they are, and we feel more connected to them. And so that always made me sad. We never felt connected to Hillary because we don't really know what she liked or wanted to wear. It was sort of like a costume. And so there was masking her. So for me, I actually feel the same way. It wasn't that I didn't love fashion. I love fashion. My mom, grew up, was an actress, went to Paris a lot, in London. And she, even though we had no money, would like literally scrounge up $300 and be like, go buy yourself a Prada bag. I worked at Intermix. I knew what it was. But it was not going to serve me at that point in my career. When you are 22 and you are in sales, especially as a woman, I think sexuality, while a lot of women think that it is a tool, I think it is a hindrance. We're not talking about selling someone on a bottle of 1942 at a club. We're talking about the most expensive purchase they will ever make in their lives. And usually that is a purchase that they make with their significant other, who sometimes is not going to love the idea of a sexualization of that process. Okay, so you have to come with your experience, your intellect. I want to be able to trust you. Certainly, if a man is married, he is not going to fight with his wife if she says we need a new broker, right? That is a, happy wife, happy life. So if my wife doesn't like the way my broker looks, we're getting rid of her. So it'll serve you to have all the focus be on everything else and not on what you look like. And so I was very resistant to sort of Instagram and what I was willing to post and not post. What I found worked for me was after I had established myself, after I was known for my credentials, for everything else, then I could share that part of myself that was into fashion and physical appearance and sexuality. And actually then sort of I would post like a workout, and obviously I would get the fire emojis from men. But what was nice is that my female clients or the wives would be like, oh, what are you doing? Like, can I go work out with you? And, because I came from a place with established legitimacy and credentials before I started putting that out there.
And that's really interesting, talking about that female dynamics. And it's great that you get that positive response from females who do follow you on Instagram. But let's talk about females in the workplace. Sometimes that can be challenging. And when you look at the Netflix show, you've got your friend. I don't know if she's a former friend now, if she's still a friend, but you've got Jade, who had been friends with you for like 10 years. And I can recall one of the quotes you made on the show was, betrayal never comes from an enemy. And I think that's really true. I mean, how are things going with Jade? But more importantly, how do you handle jealousy, that sort of female competition within the workplace and potentially beyond the workplace?
It's funny. If you were to ask Jade, she would say that there's absolutely no jealousy, that she's never compared herself to anybody ever. She has this whole quote that she says, and she's only focused on herself. However, I want to thank her for giving us what I thought was a great show and a really good dynamic and exposure for what it really is like. Yes, I believe that it's funny. In my 10 years that I did not go out or socialize or date, I found it harder to build relationships with women than I did to date and build relationships with men. And trust me, dating is one of the hardest things in the world. But a female friend,
especially in New York,
women are absolutely ruthless. They sleep with the guys you like. They tell you to wear the uglier outfit for some reason because they think that'll make them look better. Like, it is, they are unhinged. I literally had one girl who only became my friend because I guess she saw that I followed this guy she was hooking up with because we did match, and now I'd gone on a date with him. So then she reached out to me and was like, oh, we're both career women. Let's be friends. There are women that it is completely insane. And that is, I think, one is women identifying themselves as a comparison or as it relates to others. They're sort of, this whole world of social where we're like looking and comparing, whether it's physical appearance or the man that you have or the lifestyle that you have. I mean, it is such a load of bullshit, the amount of women I see posting their mini Kelly bags or their vacations in Monaco or Dubai or flying first class with caviar. Like, give me an effing break. I know how expensive those tickets are because I actually pay for them and I would never post anything like that. And I know that these women are not paying for those bags or flights or any of it. So and you know what's crazy is no man is looking for a girl, is looking at that girl posing in front of the G-Wagon and saying, wow, she's so much hotter. She could be posing in front of McDonald's and she would be equally as hot to him, probably more hot because she looks less high maintenance. Yeah. Those women are just putting that content out there to make other women compare themselves to them. And it's ridiculous that any young girl or woman would look at that and say, wow, that's what I want. Or like, you know, me, if I were to pose in a room full of my Hermes boxes or whatever. Yeah. What the F? That is complete crap. Okay. So I don't do that. And I, you know, it is unfortunate that it enters the workplace. You know, we are not friends, Jade and I. That's the short answer. We hadn't been, but I knew exactly sort of where to place her. I caught that that's what she was like when we first met each other in 2018. I'd already heard different things, but she is, you know, in a weird way, she defines friendship differently than I do. And I believe that she has a value system and boundaries in terms of what she's willing to do for access and success that I don't sit well with me. But certainly, yeah, betrayal exists. It exists from men and women. I'm actually no longer, none of the women that you saw on the show are on my team.
And that's interesting. And why? Yeah, they just didn't cut it, or?
I think when they were not, Taylor aside, because Taylor left for different reasons, but the other three really, I think when they realized they weren't holding their weight. I mean, to be honest, like I took a lot of money from a big deal that I'd done and I invested it into getting the show off the ground and building a team. And I was starting to see that this was a failed investment. Yeah. They were not willing to put in the work to be successful real estate agents on the team. And that's okay. But they were also not willing to put in the work to be successful reality stars, which, by the way, there are thousands upon thousands of people who go on reality shows every year, and most of them are not successful and still struggling. And that's why you see the same faces on Love Island and Perfect Match. And, you know, they reappear because they need the, you know, money, like 15 minutes of fame. To be Kim Kardashian or, you know, Lauren Conrad, that's a 1 in a million. And you really have to work at it. I mean, it's a job. You have to do press and podcasts and appearances, and you have to focus on what you want to say and the brand that you're trying to build. And I didn't see that any of that effort was coming from any of them. So when there was a sense that we weren't getting the renewal, which we haven't gotten, and at this point, I don't think we will get, but we'll see.
Okay.
They were completely gone. None of it was sincere, not building a real estate team, not anything. What I guess should have been hurtful, but it wasn't, was that then like once it sort of fell apart or wasn't viable, they were all sort of like parading around with Jade. And to me, it was sort of like, I know that was intended to hurt me, but like, come on, been there, done that. I'm so used, you know, women who hang out with each other because they have a common enemy is probably the most pathetic thing in the whole world. I mean, I'm not going to go look for friends that other people that don't like Jade. There are plenty. I got thousands of DMs for them. I have no interest in engaging with them. That is so beneath me. And obviously it doesn't last because they paraded around with Jade for about a month and now they all don't talk to each other either. So the long story short is that it is the truth that that's sort of just still how it is. But hopefully we evolve and you learn to align yourself with other people. And, you know, I have women that I really aspire to be friends with. And I think that's okay. I look at sort of women like my clients, Kimora Lee Simmons, for example, who, you know, I've admired for a long time. She's built a massive business. She's successful. She's an incredible mother. She's inspiring. She is very strong. And we've been friends for 13 years. And those are the rooms and circles I want to be in. you know? So it's different. And I look at other women like that in my life that I see have built incredible businesses and you know, and those are the women that usually I find really great connections with.
And I think proximity to power, that's such an important quote. And the E in D.A.R.E stands for the energy. Who do you associate yourself with? And I think the fact that, you know, Kimora Lee Simmons, I think she's great. The fact that she's one of your friends, I think it's really important, whoever you associate yourself with in a social setting, a business setting, you're more likely to become like that person. But there's two things that I want to ask. The first is, you've clearly got a thick skin. How do you handle, you've gone through failure. How do you handle failure, rejection? And the second part of that is, how do you choose your team? If someone from the UK or around the world or in New York would like to come and work for you, what would they need to do to convince you that you can give them a job?
Yes, you're 100% right. You never want to be the smartest person in the room, right?
No.
Like, I recently was told about this woman who was like, everyone was like, she's so amazing and so good, but she's a see you next Tuesday. And I'm like, I bet I've been called that a few times too. So I think I would like her. And sure enough, she's incredible. She can really move mountains and change the world. But I just want you to know, like, these are inherently biased things that exist. Even last night, I was asking ChatGPT, like, who would be a great female mayor for New York if they could think of one. And they couldn't. They gave, or who would be a great next mayor? They gave me a bunch of like New York legends, like Michael Strahan, Derek Jeter, Stephen A. Smith, you know. And I was like, what about any women? And they couldn't. And so I asked ChatGPT, what about like Hoda or Gayle King, like incredible, you know, something like that. And they were like, oh, they're too nurturing and mother energy. They don't really give the vibe that they could like tell the NYPD what to do. I was like, okay, ChatGPT, thank you for that.
There's such bias in AI, and that's something that needs to be corrected because it's the data that's been fed into it. I mean, have you considered politics? I know you're really good friends with the former mayor of New York, Eric Adams. Have you considered going into politics?
No, because I want to make money. And if you make money in politics, you might go to jail. So no. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience to have a front row seat to see what it was like. You know, this is not just a mayor of any city. This is a mayor of 8.5 million people. And I definitely, any way that I could help or serve, I would want to. There's a lot of things that I've learned, observations, and things that one day I would definitely sort of share down the line. And then, sorry, just your other question about how I hire. Look, I want people who want to show up to work, who want to be here. Right now, I have a very small and nimble team, but I like them. They don't complain. One of the women on this team, you know, really wanted to be here, and she's working another job in the evenings, and that's okay. I don't make excuses for it, and I don't feel like I need to overcompensate. That's the sacrifice that she's making to be here because it's an investment in her future. And I like that, and I appreciate that. And I think that it's okay to demand excellence from people. It's okay to ask them to be there, to spend hours in the office, to want to learn. You don't have to feel guilty. You know, at first I felt guilty, like paying them so little at first because, you know, not as little as I got paid, but little. But they are gaining so much. They are gaining my time. They are learning from the best. They can literally take this experience and job here and go get hired by any other real estate team anywhere in New York, if not the country, after having the experience with me. You know, my assistant who I started, you know, she came from nothing and had, you know, zero real estate experience and started at like a $55,000 salary. You know, left me with 200 just to go work for some chairman CEO for $400K a year. So they are getting the tools here that are going to make them successful. And there is absolutely no shame in somebody leaving you or moving on. In many ways, you know, a job well done as a parent is when you have become irrelevant. Yeah. And, you know, that can be the same as a boss. I don't need to feel shame for someone having left. It's not betrayal. Like, it could mean that I have served my purpose for them. And now they can use that to go and do so much better. And so there should be a mutual appreciation for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I want to talk about, we've touched upon failure, but I want to talk about one of your biggest successes, which is in 2023, the $75 million apartment sale on Central Park South. That was one of the largest real estate transactions in New York in 2023.
It was. So in 2023, it was the largest, but since then, I mean, the market has been crazy. So since then, there was one last year for 117. It wasn't the largest ever. There was one back in the day for like 240 or something. But anyway, There was one last year for 117. One of my really close guy friends, I am so proud of him, just did one for 129. And a month later, he followed it up. It hasn't even been announced yet, but he just did another townhouse for north of 50. So there are real big numbers being thrown around.
Yeah.
That's obviously a product also of a lot more wealth being created. There's more billionaires or more centimillionaires than ever before. So I think in the next 4 years, we'll see a trillionaire. So there's definitely more wealth. In my case, obviously, it was really exciting. I did not anticipate or expect or want to do a deal that big. I've done many other deals that are sort of double digit, 10, 20, 30. This was the biggest. And look, it's great because there's not a lot of agents in the 50 plus club in New York. I think there's about 10 of us, right, who've done those deals. So it's nice. But it really was just any other deal. I mean, this was a client that was looking for an $8,000 rental in 2018. So it was just about sort of being there, full service, white glove, building a long-lasting friendship, collaboration, always looking out for their best interest. You know, similar client wanted to buy a $20 million house last week. And I said, absolutely not. I did not like the house. I didn't think that I could get them out of it. I didn't think it was right for them. It is, you know, and I remember one of the team members here was like, are you dumb? That's like, you know, $425,000. I was like, honestly, I wouldn't even know. I'm not calculating that math. I'm really just focused on doing what's right for them. So that was just was the right apartment for them. I'm obviously, my job is not to determine what's valuable to them. My job is just to determine sort of value on their choice, right? So they chose that. I decide if I see value there. I think there is. I think that they can sell that apartment now for 85 or 90. So I'm happy with that. And obviously, just on a personal note, I'm happy that they love it and it's a great home for them.
And hopefully they'll get you to sell their home. So it's, you know, it's all swings and roundabouts.
Okay. Everyone thinks they stay everywhere forever, but that is not true.
Well, it's great because lots of people think, oh, networking, I've got to get out there, I've got to go to events, get as many business cards as possible. I don't think people do business cards anymore. Some still do. But I think the R also in D.A.R.E is about relationship building, but it's being authentic with it. I think people are more savvy now and they can detect when someone's not being genuine. And the fact that you are being genuine with your relationships speaks volumes. But I also want to talk about...
Networking is not really effective. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you pay for a members club or this? You know, really a night, if you're a high-powered business person, like that's usually not where you want to be approached about these types of things.
Yeah.
There are really, you know, I would say networking is hit the breakfast spots, hit the lunch spots, you know, get introduced through friends, go to shows, go to big sporting events, you know, things like that. Actually, you know, it's so funny. I went to the US Open. I don't care about tennis at all, but I went with a friend. And I ran into someone else that is in the consulting business standing by the staircase. And then I passed by again to get food and I by the staircase again. I was like, what are you doing here? And this person went to every US Open game, never with a ticket, just with a parking pass to stand by the parking pass staircase. That's it. And that is a great place to meet people because
I bet it is, yeah.
To park at the US Open, then you are a big hitter. And they did. They met a lot of people there.
So talking about meeting people, Jennifer Lopez, you sold one of her penthouse apartments for $23 million a year after the $75 million deal.
I did. I obviously love J.Lo. I've mentioned that J.Lo is someone that I grew up idolizing. I really appreciate actually her early impact on sort of women's bodies and appearances. She was not my client. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking about her. I brought the buyer. I've sold 3 to 4 other apartments in that building. And so it was just another one. It's also an amazing apartment. I am not going to lie, walking through her apartment was very cool for me. And I definitely was taking notes as to like what supplements and vitamins she was taking.
Oh, yeah.
And
what sort of notes could you share?
I mean, I don't know. It's personal, but I definitely looked at the face cream. I'll tell you this. Everything was like vanilla and honey and warm and spa-like and bath salts and
oils. She's big on oils, isn't she?
Lots of oils. And, you know, obviously the clothing racks were incredible, but yeah, everything just smelled amazing. Her housekeeper, she was never there. So I've met her because I fangirled over her after her movie premiere, but she was never there when I showed it, but her housekeeper always had cookies, like macadamia, vanilla cookies, and all of that.
So how did you spend or invest your commission check or checks in general?
Yeah, I wish I really invested it in real estate. I mean, in retrospect, I would say a lot of the frivolous things that I purchased, I would tell young women not to do. So when I first started making big money, you know, Chanel bags, Hermes, fine, because theoretically it goes up in value, and invest in Hermes. But, you know, Chanel, you buy it for $5,000-$6,000 and it makes you feel good, and you kind of sell it for half that.
Well, it's about 10 now. It's gone up even more.
That's crazy. Well, I moved on to Hermes. I don't buy a Chanel anymore. I love Chanel.
Ditto. Yeah.
Chanel, you know what's crazy? My Chanel bags have become like my vacation beach bags because it's whatever.
Well, mine is seriously vintage now. Like, yeah,
exactly. You know, diamonds, Ubers, all that stuff. Money can flow through you. I will tell you. I used to think $100,000 was a lot of money. I could spend that in about, 15 minutes in Cannes or Saint-Tropez.
Yeah.
One store, you're like completely screwed.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, don't do that.
Yeah.
My advice would be to, you know, there's an old expression that you should always have your hands in your pocket, one over your wallet and one over your gun. Your gun is there to protect your wallet. You don't need to be the big spender. Obviously, you want to be generous. You want to tip well. I didn't need to take all the girls out all the time to dinners and members clubs and vacations. I didn't need to pay for them to come with me to Saint-Tropez because I was going, or let them stay in, you know, my rooms, or treat them to a spa day, or, you know, we didn't need to all go out and order 1942. So actually my advice to women and myself that I'm taking now is like, the SUVs are gone. I'm using UberX. You know, and it's not that I'm making less money or whatever. I'm making more money, but I don't need that stuff. I used to think, I should only fly first or business. No, rich people fly economy. They use their miles and points actually. So I can do it. It's not great, but I can do it. If I'm not doing it international, but I'm doing it locally. And I don't, and those are, I would say buy real estate. If you're young, you can play with it, invest, be around the finance people, the hedge fund people, know their lingo, understand what they're talking about, sort of be more aware of that world, futures, what is all that stuff? Like I watch Billions every single year, that show. I watch it every year and I learn something new. It's completely crazy, but it's amazing. And then I'm inspired to sort of ask questions and be a, social anthropologist, see how the things that are happening in the world affect the market that you're in, the finance markets, the real estate markets. That'll make you more, adaptable to different networking situations, more interesting to people, but it'll make you sort of hyper aware and you'll know when you hear or see something good or a good idea. So I was determined, I really wanted a TV show. I'm not ashamed to say it. I was excited. I had a little bit on $1 Million Listing, which was really fun for me. And I didn't want to be, I'd been asked to be on many shows like, whatever, shows that are just drinking in a house or trying to date a guy. I love the real estate show concept and I wanted to make it happen. And so when the opportunity presented itself and all of a sudden I heard from the big dogs, from Adam, who's the biggest genius in Netflix, I used a lot of my money at the time. I would say the biggest investment was in that show, right?
Oh,
I wanted to
wow.
bring my A game. I wanted to bring the best clothes. I wanted to make the office look good. And I wanted to hire the best team. I had a team already. I'd already known Taylor and Giselle, but everyone else, there were many people that we had met that I tried. So it was definitely an investment. And, it's okay. We'll see. It sort of paid off in a way. It's given me access to sort of a whole new world and platform. And so I'm very grateful for that. But that's how I chose to invest that money.
And didn't you appear in a previous Netflix real estate show? I can't remember which one it was now. And you filmed some scenes and then it didn't air or something.
It was called $1 Million Listing.
That's it. That's the one.
So those were very big shows. I was in it a few times. So in 2016, I was really actually cast to be on the show. But ultimately, so I filmed the first episode, I think, of whatever that season is, with Steve Gold, Ryan Serhant, and Frederick Eklund, three of which are great friends of mine. Yeah, great show. Love all three of those guys. Steve obviously was on our show together. Yeah. Those were my favorite scenes to film. Ryan, I just did a deal with, and Frederick is at my company, so he's like older brother kind of guy. And so that was fun, but ultimately they moved on filming that season without me because they had a great formula. And then 2 years later, I did a couple other scenes just with the buyer with Frederick. That was really fun in 2018. But that show was already sort of dwindling. I actually always loved the LA version of that show with Josh Altman and Josh Flagg. That was sort of a great show. Yeah. I don't know. And it just felt like when our show came up, that it was a time that New York didn't have a good, Real Housewives of New York could never really hit its stride. They tried to revamp it. Didn't do as well either. So I obviously loved the LA show of $1 Million Listing. And in New York, we had been losing reality shows. So Real Housewives of New York had to be revamped. It wasn't hitting its stride, and $1 Million Listing New York never worked. They sort of canceled it early, I guess. Bravo had Summer House, but that was based in the Hamptons. I didn't think that there was a real show that brought New York City people out there, whether it was an occupational soap like the real estate stuff, or all these sort of unscripted shows were in LA or on the West Coast. It is a lot harder to shoot in New York. It is definitely a challenge, and I thought we did a beautiful job with it.
No, I thought it was great. It was a great show. I actually rewatched episode 1 yesterday just to get me in the mood for today.
It is not a never. It could still come back. Netflix will do things like that. Like Bridgerton was off air for 3 years and it came back. But I think Netflix is, I don't want to say that Netflix it's too big of an animal. They have live events and sporting events, and they have kids content and documentaries that are insane, and movies that and even in their unscripted world, all of their competition shows like Squid Games or, it's just insane. So, or Love is Blind. So they have less and less of the type of content that we're talking about.
So we're coming to the end. I mean, we could talk for hours. I just know if we were having lunch or dinner, this could go on for hours and hours. And I really enjoy talking to you and just learning a bit more about you. I want to just quickly touch upon the fact that this is mentoring and coaching at your fingertips. Have you had any mentors in your career or any role models that have helped you go to where you are?
Yes, absolutely. I've always had mentors. I actually have, I so much believe in mentoring and coaching. I think it is one of the most important things that people can do for themselves. I do it myself with high school students. I have a program that I started that to this day, even though I'm less involved in it, it still works and functions. And I meet so many of my friends that are still mentors, and they're like, oh, I just got back from mentoring. So I love being a part of that. In my life, you saw on the show in episode 6 with my chairman, Howard Lorber. I really appreciated having him as a chairman. He gave me no gifts or, leads ever. He really never gave me anything that I didn't deserve or special opportunities, just the opposite. But, he did give me a voice, which I appreciate, and he allowed me to earn it. And when we were in important rooms and I was in rooms where I was maybe the youngest or the only female, he always made a point to ask me what I thought and what my opinion was. And so that was very important to me. And actually, I think he gives very valuable advice. Even when you watch on the show, he says, he said to me sort of that it's a business like anything else. And, I'm not there to sort of be a parent or a therapist. And I think that's something that's valuable for a lot of people. I also have a good friend and client that I really look to as a mentor. Really helps me manage emotions and reactions to things, sort of the emphasis that it is okay to feel betrayed or hurt or to experience failure, but it is not okay to act on those things. So they happen, feel them. Don't respond. Don't let it take your energy. Don't let it affect how you are, how you treat anyone. Don't let it change you, because then it wins.
I think that's great advice to end on. Now, we have some rapid fire questions that we quickly want to go through.
Okay.
And the first is, what's the first thing you do when you wake up?
The first thing I do is actually feed my cat.
Okay.
I feel, I don't know, it says in the Bible that like animals come before humans or something. So it's like a weird thing. I don't do anything for myself until my cat has his breakfast.
And what's your cat called?
Alistair.
Very good, very good. What's the last thing you do before you go to sleep?
The last thing I do, I unwind. I usually watch Seinfeld every night.
Very good. And what's
funny? It's old New York,
What's keeping you up at night?
My age. There's a day not too far away where I will no longer be in my 30s, and that freaks me out.
Don't worry. The 40s are very good. It just gets better. What's your favorite book, or a book that's changed your life?
There are so many. I'm a big reader, but I would say like probably the most fundamentally like J.D. Salinger, sort of what I grew up on. Franny and Zoe is actually my favorite, not Catcher in the Rye, although I love that book. So much about adolescence and growing up in a world where you were exposed. They were growing up in the 50s where they were exposed to sort of commercialism for the first time. And I think it's actually very relatable in the way that we grow up today with sort of social media for the first time, and how that impacts mental health. So, yes.
No, it's really good. And your favorite song?
That's a tough one. I like Laugh Now, Cry Later by Drake a lot. That's a good like hype song for me. I would say if you look musically, probably the greatest song ever constructed is Bohemian Rhapsody. I think unanimously it's like 4 songs in one, and so many different genres. So,
and your favorite film?
Goodfellas.
I love Goodfellas. That's my favorite film as well. I love a good gangster movie.
Great.
And when was the last time you cried? We are getting to the end of these fast fire questions. When was the last time you cried?
I think I cried a little yesterday. I cry a lot. I cry almost every day.
Oh, right.
I don't know,
sometimes it's good to release.
I'm getting older, hormones, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And heels, flats, or trainers?
I love heels. I really do. I don't get flats. I really don't get unless you're like tall with really long legs. I don't know who wears flats, but trainer. I also love Air Force Ones and Air Max. So
yeah.
Don't let it fool you. The heels are for going out, not running around the city.
And the very last question: what do you dare our audience to do?
Take a risk. Take chances, take a real risk, meaning have something real to lose, and that's okay. Yeah.
And a calculated risk. Calculate, the losses potentially, but
Yeah,
just
but
go
I
for
think
it.
especially if you're younger or you're just starting out, then like you can do it. It's okay. I think even once you failed, then you know just how strong you are and how smart you are and how you're able to sort of get out of tough situations.
Yeah.
So certainly like throw yourself all in into something when you're younger. Go for it.
Great. And a sneaky question I forgot to ask, but clearly when it comes to diversity in real estate, you are up there with the guys making your money. What
Right.
more do you think organizations should be doing to help male-dominated environments become more diverse?
It's, that's a loaded question because we live in a world that is so heavily skewed towards male success, male health,
Yeah.
um, male schedules, male timeline,
Yeah.
that it is increasing. It is difficult, especially if you're looking at the sort of business, um, legal, financial, and all of that. I would say to, all organizations, gosh, where do I start? More bathrooms for one, different times. But look, I don't know. It's hard because I don't actually work in a corporate world. We're all sort of independent contractors. I think there's a lot of stigma. Actually, it's funny that the mostly negative thing that I got in terms of reaction on the show was that I was encouraging the women to freeze their eggs, as if for some reason me encouraging them to do that was against family values, or encouraging them not to have a family or not to have sort of work-life balance. And to clarify, freezing eggs is just a way to buy the same amount of time that men have. In fact, historically, women also were fertile eternally as men were, right?
Yeah.
We were one of three mammals that experience menopause and an end to fertility. Most animals don't, most female animals, but pregnancy is, in the past, historically, was a health risk, and it takes a toll on women's bodies. And as a defense mechanism through evolution, our bodies decided to sort of wind down that process so that we could live longer as females. I think it's something that companies should really understand in the workplace. And it is something that should inherently, I think, be covered by organizations, if not health insurance, universally. To freeze eggs, I don't understand conceptually why it wouldn't be. In fact, I think that makes more babies, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
I certainly think that education for men about these things, it's crazy to me how many men I meet with that don't even know what that process even is, or what, where does the tampon go, for example? I mean, that is completely nuts that we live in a world where most men don't know, or actually don't even feel comfortable using these words as if they are some sort of taboo word to say. They like laugh and giggle. Gynecologists, like they get awkward. It's normal. It needs to be normal, everyday vocabulary. Again, like on the show, I spoke about sort of vaginal rejuvenation. Not I didn't have that surgery, but just other things that you can do, laser, Botox, whatever, and also made all of the sort of people that I work with very uncomfortable. We are posting all over social media, plumping our asses and our cheeks and everything else. It is also part of the female body, and it does not need to be kept sort of so hidden. I think that'll sort of serve a lot in terms of organizational. Culturally, I wish that women would be a little more delicate about sort of the words that they use. I cannot tell you how often someone has said to me, oh, you were screaming, or, oh, she screamed at her employees. And I know I didn't scream. Me disciplining, me being firm, me being shrewd is all of those things, but it is not yelling. And I think that there are very selective and inappropriate words that are sometimes used to describe women
Definitely.
who are strong.
Yeah. Emotional, all that sort of stuff. But look, we've definitely come to the end, and I want to say thank you so much, Eleonora, for joining the D.A.R.E podcast with me, Miranda Brawn, and just being a wonderful guest, sharing your successful mindset, your advice, your experience. We've really enjoyed having you. And for everyone watching, thank you very much for joining the D.A.R.E podcast. You can follow, subscribe, like, and share. Feel free to email the darepodcast@gmail.com if you would like to make a donation to the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation. Feel free to do that as well. And I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we've enjoyed filming it, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you. Tune in every month and then hit the repeat button to become the best version of yourself.